Aioli. Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake MLB DFS Wise Stream. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And of course, I'm from the WiseTake Nation, which you can find on all the social media platforms listed above or directly at WiseTake.com. If you're looking to take your DFS game to the next level, we are a premium DFS content provider, as well as a DFS community designed to help make you a better DFS player. Go check us out at WiseTake.com. If you're new to this channel, welcome. You've come to the right place for some free DFS content. Do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Hit the like button. Subscribe. Make sure you have the notifications bell turned on so you don't miss out on any of the free content that we do. Plan on rocking out with this for the entire baseball season. We do offer a pre-lock NBA show, the Wise Stream, for paid members of WiseTake.com. If you're still doing the NBA grind, which we, of course, are. That being said, we've got a 12-game slate to break down this morning. I got my coffee, right? Got the coffee going because we're ready to do some dirties here. Tony A, I see you in the chat. What's going on? Tony A wants to know if Paulie D will be doing any of these during the baseball season. We'll have him on occasionally. It works out best for us to do this either the night before or the morning of, to make sure we give people plenty of time to watch the video, to give us time to prepare. And unfortunately, it doesn't always work out with everybody else's schedule. You know, it barely works out with my own. But, you know, we're going to make sure you guys get something, right? So, yeah, special occasions, we'll probably have Paulie D on breaking this baseball stuff down with me. But in the meantime, it's just us. Paulie does do his dirt sheet over at WiseTake.com Monday through Saturday for anybody interested. And Paulie D's content, similar to his fast break, talks about his top stacks, his top value plays, top pitchers, all that good schnit. So, yeah, he's still doing it dirty. But as far as these shows, it's really time permitting. You know, when he has time, he'll hop on. When he don't, he don't. You know what I'm saying? But either way, I'm here to rock with you guys. So again, big slate to get to. We'll go ahead and jump into it because it's just massive. A couple people you'll notice on here don't have statistics at the moment, and that's because they didn't have any stats for last season. And right now we're using last season's stats. It's a little too early to use this season's stats. So, you know, we'll wing it. I'll read you guys off some stats from this year. But again, there's not a lot to work with. Rodon, Sanchez are the two players without stats, and while they have established careers, they don't have any stats for last year, and they've only had like one start apiece this year. So we'll have to do what we do. That being said, we'll start off with Mr. Garrett Cole, who is the most expensive pitcher on the DraftKings slate. Probably the most expensive pitcher on both slates, I'm assuming. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we've got 2.84 ERA for Mr. Garrett Cole last year. One of the best pitchers in baseball, right? 3.38 xFIP, 3.21 Sierra, 32.6% K rate. However, as good as those numbers are, they actually weren't the best on the slate. It looks like Tyler Glasnow currently has those numbers as far as the best on the slate. Issue we have with Garrett Cole today mainly, right? It's the ballpark. He does face a Toronto team that's been pretty strikeout heavy. That, according to the numbers that we've done, according to the research we've done, they've been a lot more strikeout heavy to left-handed pitching. That may be something worth noting. Is Garrett Cole the top option? Garrett Cole's always the top option. Is he the top option on this slate for cash games? I think it's arguable. I think I prefer Glasnow at this point. Comparing the two, Glasnow has a much better park, right? Looks like he's going to be home in Tampa, which we have currently, with our new metrics, the 11th best park for pitching. And it could be, you can make an argument it's even higher than that. But it's based off dimensions, everything, right? On top of that, he's playing a Texas team that has looked better this season. These numbers you see for Glasnow here, the 147 ISO, 283 WOBA, 25.5% K rate, that's from last season. So they have been a little more improved. There are a lot of lefties that he's going to have to deal with in his lineup. So these are all things we want to pay attention to. So the comparison right now is Garrett Cole versus Glasnow. Garrett Cole is always going to feel safer. Even with the number differential that we're seeing, it's not great enough, right, for us to make that differentiation, if you will. So we got Glasnow, who's got better xFIP, better Sierra numbers last season. He also gets a better park. Remember, they're not playing in Toronto. They're playing in Dunedin, I think it's called, in Florida, which is very warm and humid. Excuse me, damn, most of the time, and also a small park. This is a minor league park they're playing in. Their spring training park, I believe. Yesterday the game was rained out against the Angels. Today doesn't seem to be any weather concerns, at least not according to DFS meteorologist Kevin Roth, who's the man at this shit, by the way. We lean on him heavily for weather. I don't see anything about the weather, though. Not for this game. So, curious to see what the ownership projections look like later on in the day. But as of right now, it does look to me like Glasnow is the one we want. We actually have Glasnow on a higher raw point projection slightly than Garrett Cole. Now, remember, this does factor in matchup, park, everything else. So we have him as a higher raw point output for both FanDuel and DraftKings. And because he's cheaper than Garrett Cole on both sites, we have him as a better point per dollar play. Now, again, what I don't have on this sheet that I will add at some point, probably soon, is the walk rate. Glasnow's walk rate is higher than Garrett Cole's. These things matter, especially on DraftKings where whip is important, right? Walks, hits, innings, pitch, that shit's important, right? Nonetheless, still looks like a pretty phenomenal spot for Glasnow. If you look at the projected lineup that is in place, the projected lineup, you will see that these Texas Rangers, this particular lineup, against right-handed pitching, now this is off mostly last year's numbers, a 27.5% K rate as a team, 163 ISO, 299 WOBA. So again, they've been a little bit better this year, especially against righties. But still think that the matchup is phenomenal for Glasnow. And I think he's our cash game SP1. Well, he's my tournament SP1, right? Cash games, it's still, even with the park difference, I mean, it's probably still Glasnow. What am I talking about, right? I'm curious to hear what you guys think, though. I always trust Garrett Cole's name over another pitcher, right? Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom, the kind of players I'm always going to trust in cash. But when you actually look at the numbers for Glasnow, and you actually look at the opponent, you look at the park, everything just points to Glasnow. So I think he's our SP1. But again, I'm curious to see what kind of ownership we get for tournaments. If we see Glasnow significantly higher owned than Cole, then it may be worth upping our shares to Garrett Cole, right? Because he shouldn't be that low owned ever. You get an opportunity to get him that low owned, and you're interested. Now, Garrett Cole is a fly ball pitcher, does give up a lot of hard contact when he gets hit, right? But yeah, I like Glasnow. As far as Greinke had a 4.03 ERA, a 3.51 xFIP, a 3.72 SIERA, 24.5% K rate, and he's playing Detroit. You could argue that he should be up there. But when you look at the strikeout rate, let's not compare, right? At the end of the day, strikeouts are still king in fantasy. FanDuel, DraftKings, doesn't matter. Strikeouts are still king. Let's pull up some of his shit real quick. So, yeah, here we go. So this Detroit team, if we look at their strikeout rates from last year, we're looking at a combined 25.3%, which is really good. Interestingly enough, Greinke's had, I think he's had 2 starts already, Greinke, for this season. His strikeout rate has been significantly down. And it's not just a strikeout rate, his swinging strike rate has been significantly down. 6.7% so far in these 2 starts. 4.64 xFIP, 17.8% K rate. So the numbers are down. But it's still Greinke. A decent park. And it's still the Tigers, who again, even this season, looking at their metrics, have still sucked. Still suck on paper. So I think he's in the conversation for tournaments. At his price, I don't know if it's worth, if I'm going to pay up for 2 pitchers and cash, it's probably going to be Cole and Glasnow at this point. For DraftKings, right? We got to roster 2 pitchers. But I think Greinke's an interesting alternative. I think he should carry the lowest ownership because he's so close in price to these other guys. I just don't see a lot of people clicking his name over these other guys. Doesn't project terribly, but you can see there's a pretty significant difference in the projection between him and the 2 we mentioned above, right? Pretty significant. But again, ownership does matter in tournaments. Ownership does matter. Don't be surprised you see some Greinke in cash. There's still an edge in cash. I don't think he's necessarily the best option that I would go with, especially with his numbers. But sometimes you got to play the opponent. And in Greinke's case, I think that's really what you're doing. If you're looking at Greinke's, you're playing the opponent. You're going off his numbers from last year, which is fine, because we're doing that for a lot of guys this year because the samples are so small. Then you could literally look at Greinke and make a strong case. 3.51 xFIP is phenomenal. 3.72 Sierra is still very good. But the strikeout rates just don't compare, and strikeouts are king. Maybe raise that strikeout upside a little bit when you factor in it's Detroit. But I still think I trust the better arms. I still think Glasnow is looking like the best option. Carlos Rodon looked really good. He's playing a Cleveland team that doesn't necessarily strike out a ton, right? And he's in a Chicago White Sox park that does not grade out as a very good pitcher's park. Doesn't mean we haven't seen pitchers have good games. Some of Giolito's best games have been at home in this park. But he did look really good. My issue is more about the opponent. Not that the Indians, I think, are too good at this point. But typically, historically, they're a team that doesn't strike out a lot. Even without Francisco Lindor, looking at this particular projected lineup we have for against a lefty, we're looking at a 16.5% K rate combined between this year and last year for the Indians. 183 ISO. A lot of that is coming from J-Ram with a 421. 336 Woba. So it's a mediocre spot. If he was cheap like he was last time, I'd be interested. And I think on FanDuel, you can make a stronger case. Especially when you're not really concerned about whip and all these other things. Rodon has struggled with walks in the past. So you look at these numbers, I think that I don't really want to pick on Rodon, but I do want to acknowledge it's a park boost for the Indians. We'll probably get some value with guys like Luplow leading off, things like that. So it's not something that I think we should just ignore necessarily. But on a 12-game slate, I find it hard to come here and settle. Where I would find more use for him would have been on DraftKings as an SP2. He's 8,300 on FanDuel, so it's tempting. But on FanDuel, we can usually make it work with these expensive guys, and I still don't see myself wanting to click him over Glasnow. You know what I mean? And the price on DraftKings is a little too expensive. Tristan McKenzie, we don't have a big sample on. I think this kid could be pretty good, though. I think he could be pretty good. Again, we don't have large numbers on him. If I isolate last season alone, just to look at the at-bats, 59 at-bats to lefties, 77 to righties. I think the bigger concern with Mr. Tristan McKenzie here, who was very young, is he only went 3 2/3 innings in his last game. And I did have 4 walks, 5 Ks, so I'm curious to see what his actual pitch count was. Matter of fact, I'm going to look because DraftKings will show us. 58 pitches. That's the scary part. Only 58 pitches. But this kid did have strong minor league numbers. His BABIP last year was really low, which is a little concerning. When you look at the ERA, xFIP, Sierra, it's not that different. Strikeout rate was still there. This kid's pretty good. He's pretty good. The White Sox offense was much improved last year. Make no mistake about it. They didn't strike out as much as they had in years past. They got some of these younger guys that make contact. They went out and got Eaton back, who's a low strikeout player, 18.6% last season. Right? Larry Garcia, not an intimidating hitter, but only an 18.6% strikeout rate. Madrigal, 7.2% strikeout rate against righties. But when we talk about saving money, he's someone, if I wasn't so concerned about the pitch count on FanDuel at 7.5, I'd be interested. I feel like we're getting a deal on this, right? But again, with the 58 pitch count on FanDuel, we're chasing quality starts. And that makes me a little bit nervous with a pitcher threw 58 pitches in his last game. So someone to keep an eye on. I don't see myself wanting to pay 9.2 for him. I can tell you that. Again, it's just too close. What am I saving? I'm too close to Glasnow, too close to Greinke, too close to Cole. I just don't see it. I just don't. But if I didn't think he was on any kind of pitch count, or we were under the impression that he was fully stretched out, or that the team trusted him enough, I would make a case for him on FanDuel. But again, quality starts kind of important there. Why is it so important? Because other pitchers are getting it. That's why it's so important. Because you're competing with other pitchers who are going to get that extra, 4 or 6 points? I think it's 6 points. I don't even know. But you're competing with that. And that makes me nervous. Sandy Alcantara. I mean, this dude's got nasty stuff. Last year, you can see his xFIP and Sierra were significantly higher than his ERA. Little concerning. BABIP wasn't all that low. Ground ball rate was really good. That could have something to do with it, right? Atlanta's park actually shows up as a fair pitcher's park. And now, what this doesn't factor in is weather. So one thing about Atlanta, the dimensions of the park aren't necessarily great, but they do have heat, they have humidity, some of these other factors that we have to weigh in and consider. But Alcantara himself, not bad. Now the Braves' offense is pretty good. That's an issue. One thing about the Braves that we saw last year opposed to different years is they were striking out a lot more last year. The strikeout rates were significantly higher last year. And you can see it in their metrics, 24.4% K rate as a team last year. But again, WOBA ISO, very strong. Very strong. So I actually think he's in contention for SP2. You're still not saving a ton of money on DraftKings. Now, am I paying $9.5 for him on FanDuel? Probably not. But on DraftKings at $8,500, when I'm looking to still get a high upside pitcher while saving money, I can get down on that. Pairing him with a glass now, I could see. Right? I could see that. So I definitely think Alcantara is in play. Now, you never want to rule out the Braves' offense. There's already been a slate or two where Acuna was really low owned. Was really low owned. Freddie Freeman was really low owned because we've had some decent pitchers against him, right? Eflin and some of these other guys, some high strikeout pitchers, and that low ownership, they went out and did the dirty. I think as of right now, I'm looking at Atlanta more for one-offs. But I don't want to rule out the stat because they're going to be crazy low owned. However, you would think on a 12-game slate, we'll find some better pitchers to attack. But I think Alcantara is more of a DraftKings deal for me as an SP2 at 8,500. Cobb, I'm just not interested in you, bro. There's not enough strikeout upside for me. Price is fair. Park is awesome. Kansas City grades out as one of the best pitching parks in the game because of their dimensions. But the strikeout upside, it's just, Kansas City will bring some strikeout upside. But Cobb himself, 16.8% K rate, I just can't do it. Just can't do it. Brady Singer, 6.6 on FanDuel. Not cheap enough on DraftKings. Not cheap enough for my liking. At the same time, not that interested in the Angels because of the park. But obviously, one-offs of Ohtani, Mike Trout, these guys, I can always get down with. Madison Bumgarner, man. Talk about a dude that was on top of the world. Got hurt a couple times. Some of them self-induced, right? I think one of them was a dirt bike accident or some shit like that. He's been terrible ever since. He's been bad. Now, he does have a good park. If the roof is closed, we'll have to check that. They've been opening the roof. Usually they open the roof this time of year. It does make a difference. Right? Again, these metrics for this park doesn't factor in the weather or the roof conditions, none of that shit. They factor in the dimensions of the park. So on paper, it is a good park. And we've seen with the humidor, with the dome, it has turned into more of a pitcher's park. He is playing Oakland, who plays in an even worse park. Oakland, let's take a look at Oakland against lefties real quick, right? We've got big strikeout rates. We got really bad numbers here. Last year, they were not very good. Last year, they had a 26.3% strikeout rate for this projected lineup. It does not include Lowry, who didn't really play last year at all. 147 ISO, 287 WOBA. Just not good. So what wins out here? As bad as Bumgarner being so bad with a 44% hard contact rate, a 6.48 ERA, 5.83 xFIP, 5.31 Sierra, or Oakland, who's been terrible against lefties for some reason. What wins out? That's the question. I lean towards Oakland's offense. I like to attack pitchers who are struggling. He's struggling. I like Oakland's offense. Freddie Peralta, he's looked pretty good this year. He's got strikeout upside. He just did the Cubs dirty. Most recently, he did. Now, he's in Milwaukee this time, which is more of a hitter's park. But if the Cubs are going to swing and miss, doesn't really matter, does it? I think he's definitely in play. I think he'll get some ownership, some traction as an SP2 on DraftKings. If he's too popular, I may back away a little bit. But as of right now, I'm looking at his numbers, and they stand out. It's the bottom line. Hard for me to get behind him in the beginning because he's really a two-pitch pony, right? Fastball, curveball, that's it. So you would think in the majors that maybe he would struggle, but that has not been the case for him. Really hasn't. But I lean towards Peralta. Robbie Ray against the Yankees in this park, lethal, scary. He could definitely get some. He definitely has some swing and strike, some swing and miss stuff. So we don't want to rule him out necessarily. And the Yankees can strike out from time to time, but they have a lot of power. Did forget to mention, we did talk about the two pitchers from the Cleveland White Sox game. We do have winds blowing out to center at around 10 miles an hour, but it's really cold. right? Which is not necessarily great for the ball carrying. So kind of a moot point, I think. It is a small park though. But yeah, I'll be taking some shots with the Yankees. I'm sure everybody will. Is it worth the leverage of Robbie Ray coming off of an injury? He's been dealing with an elbow injury. I don't think so. He's cheap enough, right? Like he could show it, but he's really close to Peralta. So I don't know. I don't think so. I just don't. But yeah, the Yankees should be pretty popular today. The Yankees haven't looked all that great offensively. They would look like terrible and nothing like that, but they haven't looked all that great either. But yeah, I mean, this is a pretty good spot. Yankees against lefties at one point were phenomenal, especially at home. Last season, they weren't as good as they were the year before. They just weren't. Some of these guys like Stanton, 348 ISO, 390 WOBA against lefties, but also a 34.5% K rate, right? And he missed a lot of time last year. LeMahieu, only a 3.9% K rate, 401 WOBA, but a 128 ISO. So they got some things they have to overcome. Now, Robbie Ray, historically, has always been an extreme fly ball pitcher, which is why we like the Yankees so much in this spot. 51.5% fly ball rate with a 40% hard contact rate against the Yankees in this tiny little park. That dimension-wise is already one of the top hitting parks in the game. Then you factor in the heat, humidity in Florida. Yankees look elite in this spot. In cash games, they're going to be one of the teams you look to play. Bottom line. Chris Bassett. So this is a guy that I think last year, in my opinion, took a little bit of a step back. 2.29 ERA looks good, but a 4.49 xFIP and a 4.46 SIERA. That's significantly higher than his ERA. That's a little concerning. Strikeout rate was down to 21.1%. To me, it looked like he had a step back. I was a big Bassett fan the year before. Last year, I just wasn't thrilled with the numbers. 9.8% swinging strike rate does not indicate to me that the numbers should have been higher. This D-backs team can be tough to strike out. It doesn't mean they won't strike out, but they can be tough to strike out. They got guys like Cole Calhoun with an 18.3%. A lot of the guys are right on that cusp, right around that 20% range, which is what I use as that marker, right? I want to see like higher than like 23% to consider the guy a big strikeout guy, you know. So there's some concerning factors there, especially when you look into Bassett's, gives up more hard contact to lefties, gives up a lot more fly balls to lefties. He's going to see a decent amount of lefties. Calhoun, Peralta, Gilbert Cabrera, Eduardo Escobar, all lefty bats that he could potentially see. I say potentially because we don't have the actual lineup out just yet, right? So we'll see. Tony A says, I like Peralta. My Cubs can't hit and they strike out a lot. They have been, last year and this year they strike out. I mean, this year it's early, but yeah, last year they did strike out a lot. Tony A says, to save money, how about Gant, Washington lineup missing players? We'll take a look at that for sure, my man. We'll take a look at that for sure, Tony. But Bassett, cheap on both sites. I think we could take some shots more so on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's harder to do it because the pitchers that we got up top have a lot of ceiling, and you only get one. So if you're going to do it, you got to take it with a pitcher that's got some ceiling. So I get concerned with that with Bassett. So again, you look at the ERA. To me, ERA don't really mean shit. ERA is more of a result thing. Earned run average, right? Luck doesn't factor in none of that shit. The xFIP and SIERA to me are more true numbers of what the pitcher's really been doing based off contact metrics, everything else. And I'm just not that impressed. Wade Miley looked really good in his first start. He's playing the Giants, though. 5.65 ERA wasn't great. The xFIP was a little bit lower, but not much. He's kind of coasted, man. He really has. Now, he does get a major park boost. Giants have the fourth best pitching park in the game, just based off of the dimensions. And it's true. They're one of the top pitching parks in the game. What's interesting here is the Giants are a team that I really like against lefties. I don't necessarily like them at home ever, but I do like them against lefties. And look at the numbers last year. You'll see why. Austin Slater, 342 ISO, 471 WOBA. Yastrzemski, which is lefty on lefty, by the way, 333 ISO, 413 WOBA. Even Solano, who's got a 136 ISO, had a 364 WOBA and a 12.9% strikeout rate. Longo, Evan Longoria, 216 ISO, 361 WOBA, 16.4% strikeout rate. Wilmer Flores, who they have now, 393 ISO, 394 WOBA. Ruff, 298 ISO, 378 WOBA. This is a team that can hit lefties really well. Now, despite the shitty numbers for Miley, does have really good ground ball stuff. BABIP was a little high, telling us maybe he was a little unlucky at times. When you look at these Giants opponents, this is overall, right? They were significantly worse against righties. I like the Giants offense again, man. On a 12-game slate, does it seem super lucrative to attack one of the best pitching parks in the game? Not necessarily. But I like the fact that we're talking about some late night hammer action, right? Late night hammer action. And we're talking about a team that is really good against lefties. I mean, they were last year. The numbers I read you were based off of last season, which was a much larger sample than we have currently. I like the Giants, man. I really do. So I'll be taking some shots with them. Alzolay, man. Talk about a guy that disappointed many. You know how many teams I had that were just right outside of first place on FanDuel with Alzolay, who put up a 15, I think, for me. If he would have put up just 15 more points, you know how much money would have been taken down? But what ifs were no good, right? Who gives a shit about what ifs? Let's dive into Alzolay a little bit. Playing the Brewers. Brewers, very strikeout heavy team. However, they do appear to be heating up a little bit, man. They beat the shit out of Ponce de Leon yesterday. I mean, they just mercilessly beat his ass. That's what they did. If we look at Alzolay's numbers from last season, they look great, but we had a very small sample to work with. 41 plate appearances to lefties, 46 to righties. He had a 3.35 xFIP, 33.3% K rate. We had from FanGraphs, we have it at 3.62. Now his BABIP was really low, telling us that he also got a little lucky in between. Now his SIERA indicates 4.15, so SIERA is indicating that he was way worse than his ERA showed, right? These are all things we have to consider. And now, forget about the wind. We're in just a much smaller park. Milwaukee Miller Park, one of the smaller parks out there, one of the better hitting parks out there. He got his tits lit. He did. But this is why we liked him last time. When you look at the strikeout rates for this projected Brewers lineup, we're looking at a 28.8% average strikeout rate from the projected Brewers lineup that we have. Hot streaks are a thing in baseball. I got to keep an eye out for that. But I hate to say it, but I think I'm going to at least take some shots, right? At least on DraftKings. Maybe on FanDuel, again, you could argue the ceiling deal. We don't have cores on the slate, so we don't feel like we have to go out of our way to have some crazy bats. We do have mini cores, right? Or cores light. Maybe it's the new cores. And when we factor in the Toronto Park, we have a lot of expensive Yankee hitters, and we aren't sure how to get them. On FanDuel, my initial thought is to get the pitcher. Find some value bats to place in between, because there's going to be value bats. Place them in between those Yankees and those lineups you're trying to do. But on DraftKings and FanDuel, if you can find a real cheap pitcher that has some upside, you can, your life would be a lot easier. How many pitches did Alzolay throw? Alzolay. 5 innings. He threw 77 pitches. So I'm not that concerned from an upside standpoint. Again, 2 homers, 4 earned runs. No. But he gets another crack at it. Is Milwaukee red hot right now? Or was that just kind of a fluke thing? I don't know. We'll find out. But I think we at least have some tournament interest here. Price relative to upside. He's at least showing us he's capable of getting some swings and misses. He's at least capable of that. Aaron Sanchez, again, we don't have the numbers for. He's playing Cincinnati. Really good park to pitch in. I think this is, you're going to revitalize your career. Going to the Giants park is probably a decent decision, right, for your career. If I could pull up 2019 stats on Aaron Sanchez. He did not look good in 2019. 5.29 xFIP. What is that? 19% K rate. Not great. He struggled on both sides of the plate, but more so to lefties, which is like when he was really on in Toronto, he was slightly reverse splits, and until he gets back to that form, it's a little concerning. He did look decent in his first start, but the sample is really small. And you know what? The Reds' offense looks really good. I don't know that I try it. I don't know. I feel like there's enough guys that I'm like, I feel like maybe I can try that. I don't know if I want to come here. He did throw 74 pitches. He played San Diego, which is a respectable, good offense in San Diego. So he gets an even better park this time around. 6 hits, 1 earned run, 4 Ks, 11 ground balls, and 3 fly balls. That's pretty good. That's a really good ground ball to fly ball ratio. So maybe we will give it some shot. To be honest with you, I think it's more so looking at the Cincinnati offense and just respecting the fact that they've looked pretty good to start the season. Now, there are some strikeouts in there. Castellanos, let me isolate this to 2020 just to work with the bigger samples. Last year, Castellanos had a 32.3% strikeout rate. Suarez had a 30.3%. There's definitely some strikeouts to work with here. Now, the Reds team ISO, 244, really high. They were really good against righties last year. But keep in mind that they also, at least half their games, play at home in Great American Small Park, one of the best hitting parks out there. So maybe we should be giving some more props or more consideration, at least, to Mr. Aaron Sanchez. The statless one. One of the statless ones. It's a big fat maybe, right? Justice Sheffield, one of the best hitting parks in the game against Baltimore. Another polarizing spot, if you will. It's Baltimore. Don't know what you're going to get from Baltimore, man. They've got some potential upside. Both ways. We've seen situations where they kind of go off with the bats, and we've seen situations where they suck. Now, what bothers me with Sheffield, 3.58 ERA is not terrible, but a 4.27 xFIP and a 4.55 Sierra tells me he's not that great. 20.7% K rate, it all tells me he's just not that great. Ground ball rates look pretty good, and that'll help you in a park like this. You're going to need that shit. But is it worth it? I really don't know. I would imagine people give him a shot on DraftKings. This is a big park downgrade for him. He normally pitches in Seattle, which is a huge park, and now he's coming to Baltimore, which is really small. So there's some red flags here. If we look at the weather, we also have some potential weather impacts here. Weather implications, if you will. Scattered showers still hanging around during game time, heavy enough to cause trouble if they go over the ballpark. So Roth has this as an orange-yellow. So we got some risk here. Is the combined risk of the weather with the combined risk of him himself in this park worth it? When I look at his numbers, I just feel like we can find better options. That's just how I feel. It's the truth. Dane Dooning, he looked really good in his first start. Last year, 239 BABIP. That's concerning a little bit, telling me that maybe he was a little on the lucky side. Now, I don't think he pitched a whole ton last year. 73 plate appearances to lefties and righties. But this kid's got some strikeout stuff. He had a 24% K rate overall. And against righties, he had a 26% K rate. That's pretty solid. He is going to see at least a few lefties here, right? He's going to see probably Tetsugo, Meadows, Brandon Lau, Joey Wendell. There's some lefties in here he's going to have to deal with. His walk rate was significantly higher to lefties. His fly ball rate was significantly higher to lefties. His hard contact rates were significantly higher to lefties. One thing about the Rays, they do strike out a lot. That we know. The Rays strike out a lot. But they're also pretty good, and for some reason, they've been pretty good at home. This is one of the bigger parks out there. I say for some reason because this is a very pitcher-friendly park. You can see 11th overall pitcher-friendly park based off the dimensions. And they always close their roof. I mean, they have a dome. They close their roof. They have a fucking dome. Again, another polarizing-ish spot. Now, 6-6 on DraftKings is very tempting. Again, on FanDuel, you're not as tempted because you've got the glass nows and these guys are sacrificing some of that ceiling. Very tempting on DraftKings. It's a hedge spot. If you're going to go heavy on Dooning, you have to also have some hedge with Rays. Now, we preach multiple teams, as many teams as you can for that reason. Especially in a baseball team with so much variance, you want to have more opportunities to combat that variance. There's multiple outcomes potentially. You know what I'm saying? Now, Dooning is listed as the opener, but he threw 10. I don't know. He did throw 5 innings against Toronto. And that was 6 days ago. He threw 70 pitches. Now, maybe that's what it is he wasn't going to go more than 70 pitches. That's a possibility. He wasn't supposed to go more than 70 pitches. It just so happens that his 70 pitches took him through 5 innings. But I don't know if that's how that works. So he's listed as an opener. Maybe there's something I'm missing here. But, yeah, I mean, I think Dooning's at least interesting. We'll have to do some more research on that aspect. We don't want to get fucked that way. I'd say that. You don't want to get fucked that dirty. But I think there's some potential upside here. And we did see the Rays kind of tee off on Jordan Montgomery a little bit. This is a different pitcher that I think has some better strikeout stuff overall. So I'm interested on DraftKings as SP2 at this price in tournaments in the Jip Hip Hey Life. Dean Kramer, I like to call him Kramer. 4.82 ERA was not good. 5.14 xFIP was not good. 4.98 Sierra, not good. Does have a little bit of strikeout upside, but gives up a lot of fly balls, which is not good in this Baltimore park. Seattle's offense is not good. They're not good. They could pop every once in a while. I mean, this is a huge... I do like to take shots on offenses that get massive park boosts. I do. I do like to take shots. Seattle plays in a very large park, so this is a massive park boost for them. And they got some guys with some power. Mitch Haniger, Kyle Seager. Like, they got some guys that could do it. They got some rookies who are kind of interesting. But it's not pretty. It's not fun. We don't have a huge sample size on Kramer, right? We're not interested in pitching this guy. Like, I'm not pitching Kramer. We got weather we talked about here. We have a pitcher that's just lacked upside. The question is, do we want to take shots on Seattle's offense? And I think we want to at least take some. Because we have an opportunity to take advantage of a good park, assuming this game plays without issue or at least just finishes somehow. We've got an American League team, meaning instead of a pitcher hitting, we've got an extra hitter. May not be any better than a pitcher hitting, but we at least have that aspect. And we have a Seattle team that's getting a massive park boost here against a fly ball pitcher. So I think I am interested in having at least some stacks of Seattle. When we talk about offenses, we talked about the Yankees, one of the more obvious places on the slate, right? And those are good. We want to work those in, but we also want to keep an eye out for these lower owned stacks that we can maybe get a little overweight on, right? You get yourself even 5% Seattle stacks. Even 5%, you probably going to be overweight on the field. Maybe not. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but just in general, forget about the actual numbers. Just hypothetically, when you're approaching a stack that you think is going to be low owned, you don't need to necessarily get as much. You know what I'm saying? To get overweight. That's my point. David Peterson, the Mets game seems to be the riskiest. Rain just kind of sitting everywhere. It sets up with no movement, and right now models are showing it setting up right over New York. Maybe we get lucky and it forms 10 miles north or south and just holds in that spot. But right now he's not optimistic this game getting in. So the Mets did cancel their game yesterday. They tried to play it, ended up having to cancel it. This is probably why. They probably tried to play it because they were concerned about today's weather. I'm sure they looked ahead and was like, shit, don't look good. I can tell you that if the game does play, I like Philly's offense. Again, last time Peterson was on the hill, we liked the Phillies offense, and this is why. 3.44 ERA looks beautiful. 5.11 xFIP tells us a different story. 5.26 Sierra builds on that xFIP story. Not a lot of strikeout upside, 19.5%. What's this? 0.233 BABIP, telling us he was very lucky, and that explains his low ERA. Not particularly a great ground ball picture. And he's playing a Phillies team that really has a lot of lefty mashers on it. Now, they just saw him. They just tattooed him. This park is a little better, right? Right at the middle of the road for pitching parks in terms of dimensions at 15. But when you look, I'll read you off some of these numbers for we're looking at again, let me just make sure. Yeah, based off of last season. The Phillies had a combined average for this projected lineup, particularly that I expect to see. 262 ISO to lefties, 387 WOBA, and only an 18.6% strikeout rate. Very patient as a team, 12.2% walk rate against lefties. I mean, I don't want nothing to do with Peterson, even if the game plays. What I'm interested in is the Philly bats against him. Now, again, it's not the greatest hitting environment, not the greatest hitter's park. We want to keep that in mind, factor these things in. But yeah, if the game goes off, I think the weather, the park, will probably lower the ownership on Philly. If this was a smaller slate, yeah, I expect people to be all over Philly attacking this dude, especially after they just lit him up. But weather and all these things we can take advantage of from an ownership standpoint to lower that shit. So yeah, Phillies where we're looking. Chase Anderson last year, ERA was 7.22. The numbers weren't nearly as bad as that. Looks like he was on the opposite end of the spectrum. He was really unlucky. 362 tells us he was just really unlucky. The Mets offense, pretty good. The Mets offense does have some sneaky strikeout upside in it, right? They can strike out more than I think people give them credit for. But they're still a fairly threatening offense. Looking at their numbers from last year, Nimmo had a 230 ISO, 418 WOBA. They do have Lindor, who's, believe it or not, his numbers were not that great against righties last year. 172 ISO, 319 WOBA. Dom Smith was awesome last year, 328 ISO, 414 WOBA. Pete Alonso, 277, 363 WOBA. I think the Mets are at least in play here, but there's nothing over the top. We're already risking the weather. That part we know, right? The game's got some weather risk to it, and it's just not the best. Like, their numbers weren't as good as the Phillies looked against Peterson. Right? So I don't think I want to pitch Chase, especially with the weather threats. I don't think he should be this cheap. I think he's got a little bit. I think he's shown a little bit more upside than that. I mean, if you look at Chase Anderson last year, as we discussed, 66 plate appearances to lefties, 88 to righties. Like, it wasn't as bad as this price would indicate. 7.22 ERA, I understand, but again, his Sierra and his X were significantly better than that. So we can see he was one of the more unlucky guys, but you can argue he was the unluckiest pitcher on today's slate last year. So I don't want to discount him, but with the weather, and then you factor in the Mets do have some upside as a team, makes me a little nervous to try that. Eric Fetty Wap, pitching for Washington. Was this another game that we had some weather for? Green yellow. He thinks it's pretty good. Some light rain, but he don't expect to see a stop play, so we're okay here. I'm not a Fetty guy. I don't think Fetty's very good. Now, the Cardinals' offense last year was atrocious, but they've made some additions. They got Nolan Arenado. I do think Tommy Edman will be good. I think Goldschmidt has looked really good so far to start the season. How could you not like the Cardinal bats? They are playing in St. Louis, which grades out as the 7th best pitchers park. They're another one where in the midst of the summer, they get a lot of heat, a lot of humidity, which can elevate the park as far as how it plays out for hitters. But in the meantime, it is one of the better pitching parks. So that's a factor that's not too great, right? And again, the Cardinals last year, just numbers were terrible. What they have going for them is Mr. Fetty Wap over here at a 12.6% K rate, a 5.8% swinging strike rate. This dude just does not miss bats. Now, he does have pretty good ground ball rates. Ground ball rate, 54.2 is pretty good. But a 41.4% overall hard contact rate. Just in general, I think we take some shots on the Cardinals. They let me down yesterday, that's for sure. But I think we go back, we take some shots on them. No interest in Fetty Wap. Casey Mize. This is a rookie that I think Detroit has been fairly high on. Don't like the opponent. He's playing Houston, a team that's very tough to strike out. And to be quite frank with you, I haven't been all that impressed with what I've seen. Now, this kid's had severe splits. He's actually been pretty solid to righties. 260 WOBA last year, 109 ISO, 23% K rate. Opposite end of the spectrum for lefties. 431 WOBA, 333 ISO, 16.7% K rate. His walk rate doubles from 6.6 to 12.5. His ground ball rate goes from 46.3 to 35. Hard contact rate goes from 31.7 to 39.6. So the lefties, he really struggles with lefties. We've got Brantley, we've got Yordan Alvarez, Kyle Tucker as the lefties we expect to see. And on top of that, we've got some pretty good right-handed hitters in Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa, and these guys. So I think I may look more for Houston for one-offs, right? Because even though the numbers look horrific, he has been significantly worse to lefties. So that's kind of where I want to stick. I think Yordan Alvarez and Brantley are pretty awesome. A nice little mini stack action. I really like Alvarez as a one-off. He's coming off of a down season, but he was hurt all season last year. He barely played last year. So I like Yordan Alvarez a lot. I do. And that's the thing you'll find. A lot of times when you're looking for your one-offs, like I think Juan Soto the other day, double donged, and he was just extremely low owned. So low owned. Juan Soto, one of the best hitters in the game right now. And it has a lot to do with the opposing pitcher because I think they were playing Zach Wheeler that day, who shut them down the first time. But at some point, that pitcher is probably going to come out the game, right? So when you're selecting your one-offs, as long as you don't have the pitcher against that player, you don't want to be opposed to that shit. That's all I'm saying. Yanoa, Huascar, Yanoa what I'm saying? Miami against Atlanta. The other side of this, this kid's interesting. We don't have a ton to work with him. He's another one whose splits are just kind of weird. So he gave up more power to righties last year with a 186 ISO. But in terms of strikeouts, 22.7% K rate to righties, 11.5 to lefties. Again, just a weird situation. The Miami bats are never that enticing. But do we want to take shots on this dude? I just don't see it. I don't think so. I don't know enough about him. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be transparent about it. I don't know enough about him. Right? He played Washington, and he did pretty well, 5 Ks. Only threw 68 pitches, though. Now, mind you, he pitched 4 days prior to that against Philly. He pitched 1 inning. He's 6K. The question is, do we think we need him? And I think it depends on what lineups we see and where the value's at. That's what it comes down to. But he's playing Miami. Last year, a lot of times in cash, man, people didn't even give a damn who he was playing. They just throw him out there. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to grab this and put this here so we can always have this little, so you guys can always see what the stats are that we're looking at. John Gant, I know in the chat we had a question about this. My boy had a question about this. Oh shit, look at that. We got the 199. What's this? The super chat from Solid Picks. Shout out to Paulie 8Ds, my man Patio Joe. Hey, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Solid Picks has talked me off glass now. I can't do it, man. I just spent the last however long I've been on here talking about Glass now and how he just stands out the most on the slate. But I do know that Tony A was asking about John Gant, right? Talking about John Gant. We can take a look at John Gant, who is the cheapest pitcher on the slate at the moment. Let me see what he's done this year first, right? We got some build up for this one. We got some anticipation for this one. Let's see. So Gant played against Miami. 82 pitches, 3 walks, 4 Ks, 5 ground balls, 1 fly ball, 4 hits. Took him 82 pitches to get through 4 innings against Miami. They gave him a battle. He put up a 12.2, which on DraftKings at this price isn't the worst thing, right? I mean, your target market for cash games usually around 2x, so he pretty much would have given you that, right? He is playing Washington, a team that historically has not, doesn't strike out a whole ton, right? But I tell you what, man, I do think Gant's underpriced for the upside. Now, Gant's another one, man. So listen, small samples, 21 plate appearances against lefties last year, 42 against righties. So we're not working with a whole ton of sample size. But he did have a 29.5% K rate last year with a 3.09 xFIP, a 3.44 Sierra. He pitched out of the bullpen a lot over his career, and he's one of the reasons that their bullpen's been good. Now, if you look at 2019, 4.6 and a much larger sample, 4.69 xFIP, 22.3% K rate. The numbers were different. So which is the real him? I'm not quite sure. I do think there's a good chance that he just improved, right? He is a young dude, or at least he hasn't been in the league all the time. I think he's definitely worth taking some shots, man. Just playing it the long way. My concern, of course, is he's playing a Nationals team that, again, doesn't have a ton. Like Trey Turner, 14.5% K rate. Juan Soto, 14.3. There's some guys in here that could be tough to strike out. But I definitely think that there's some upside. Will I take a shot on FanDuel? I don't know. I don't know. He's only 6'1", but that quality start means a lot to me, and I just don't know if he's a lock for that quality start. 5'7" on DraftKings to pair with a Glass now. I could buy into that. I could. 62.9% ground ball rate last year. That's pretty solid. So he's going to be a little more, a victim, if you will, of the BABIP, right? Ground ball pitchers, you live or die by the batting average balls in play. You're relying on luck a little bit depending on where those ground balls are placed. But you're less likely to give up home runs. That's for damn sure. So, yeah, I think we definitely take some shots on Gant, especially on DraftKings and maybe even on FanDuel if you think he can get the quality start. But the quality start on FanDuel is so important. It's not important when you have a shitty pitching slate. Over the weekend, we had a couple really shitty pitcher slates. It didn't really matter. But when you have a lot of good pitchers on the slate, you're talking about the difference of a lot of ceiling already. So you need every ounce you can get. If Glasnow goes out there and puts up a 55-60 on FanDuel, then you need that damn quality start, even if he's 6'1". You need to compete because you got to make up those points elsewhere. Point per dollar could take you so far. You still got to make up the points. But yeah, man, Tony. Yeah, Tony's already saying no Gant on FanDuel. I'm with you on that, man. I'm with you on that. But I do think Gant on DraftKings and SP2 is highly in play. Tony A and Solid Picks in here talking about Trammell. I'm with you on that. It's a pretty good slate. I'm excited for it. I like doing these shows with you guys because it gets me kind of prepped. Projections are already up. I'll take a look at those and make some tweaks based off of some of the things we talked about. And, I'll write my core plays article. Paulie D will have his fast break sheet over at WiseTake.com. We got basketball tonight as well. I'll be working on that throughout the day. We'll have our pre-lock live stream later on about 6:45 or so. I think it's a 7:30 lock. I'm pretty sure. At WiseTake.com. So go join us there. If you're interested, if not, I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Again, going to feel out how we do these shows. I'm either going to do them the night before or do them in the mornings. I like to do them a little earlier than I went today. I think I went 10:30? I shot for 10:15, but shit happens. But either way, I appreciate you guys. If you could share the show. I'm trying to build this channel back up to, as great as it once was, man. At one time, we had a really good little following on here, and we were doing really well. And then, life happened, and, other things got prioritized, which you have to do sometimes. But we're trying to do what we do, and all I'm asking for y'all is to, spread the message, share it out. We're trying to get back to that, to the good quality free content, because we do say we are men of the nation, we are men of the people. So we appreciate y'all. Tony, I appreciate you, man. Solid Picks, I appreciate the super chat, bro. Shout out to y'all for hanging out with me. Other than that, I'll catch y'all in the Slack chat. For the WiseTake Slack chat, if you subscribe. For myself, the entire WiseTake Nation, as always, good luck.
Yes.